everyone. Watch till the end of the video for a surprise. I'll see you there. My two girlfriends and I decided to go to Thailand in 2004 after the tsunami and help them clean the island of Koh Phi Phi, as we were offered this assignment by our local university. Everything was fine and we helped clean things all over the island. We usually take turns with the other volunteers to take off days. When it was my turn, one of my girlfriends, Joey, decided to take it with me as we really wanted to go shopping. We were recommended a hotel by the locals as we wanted to save money on lodging and spend more on shopping. It was a gloomy hotel, but it's the same everywhere at 11 p.m. in Phuket. So we checked in and left immediately for shopping and returned only around 3 a.m. Our room had 2 single beds with a side table in the middle and a telephone on the table. There was also a picture of a regal-looking lady above the table. Her look was very stern and fierce, and as we were comparing about our buys and giggling away, I suddenly noticed the face of the lady. She had a full grin on her face. Joey followed my gaze and was stunned herself. We carried everything by hand without bothering to pack and ran out and then checking out. Only after reaching a coffee shop did we pack our stuff and waited for dawn with many cups of coffee to keep us awake.
A few years back, my wife and I went for a 3-day, 2-night shopping trip to Bangkok. We stayed at Bangkok Palace, which was located under a highway. We arrived in the afternoon and checked into our room on level 3. It's a long corridor with well-lit wall lamps, and our room is in the middle of the corridor. We unpacked all our stuff and went shopping. Nothing unusual to this point. We returned to the hotel after supper, which is around midnight. This time the corridor looks very dark, as most of the wall lamps were not working. While walking towards our room, my wife grabs my arm, walking closely beside me. As she is very easily scared, I don't think too much about this and moved on to open the door. After opening the door, I turned around and saw my wife staring at the end of the dark corridor with a pale face. I asked her, "What are you looking at?" and looked in the same direction she was looking, but I saw nothing, and she said it's nothing. I know something weird is going on, but since she's not telling me, I just keep quiet. That night I stay awake and make sure I sleep after my wife. Nothing strange happened. The next morning we were ready to go shopping again. When I was closing the door, my wife suddenly walked to the end of the corridor all by herself. I quickly closed the door and followed behind her. This time the whole corridor's wall lamps are all working fine. After she reached the end of the corridor, she looked at the right, which is a stretch of solid wall around 8 to 10 meters. No door or exit. Her face turned pale again. I asked, "Are you alright?" She said, "I'm fine, let's go shopping." After shopping and supper, we went back to the hotel at about the same time, midnight. When we reached the corridor, it's dark again, with many wall lamps not working. While walking to our room, my wife grabbed my arm again. This time, she grabbed it very tight and was walking right behind me with her head hiding behind my shoulder. I know she definitely saw something at the end of the corridor. I stared hard at the end of the corridor, but there's nothing there. After opening the door, my wife went straight to bed, covering her whole body with a blanket. I'm worried and asked her, "Do you want to change room or something?" She replied, "It's late. Just let me sleep and don't ask me anything until we're back home." After my shower, I lie down beside her and she's already sleeping soundly. I kissed her forehead and found that she had a fever. I put a cold towel on her forehead and stayed awake by her side till she woke up in the morning. She looked very weak and still had a slight fever. Anyway, we pack our stuff and head for the airport. Note, the corridor lights are working fine again. On the way to the airport, Amazingly, she starts to look well again and her fever has gone. When we are home and unpacking our stuff, this is when she told me everything. The first night she stared at the end of the corridor because she saw an old lady wearing all white, pushing the cleaner trolley towards the end of the corridor. Upon reaching the end, the old lady turned right and moved on. Nothing unusual to my wife, but she feels a little eerie, that's all. Next morning, she went to the end of the corridor to check and found that it was a stretch of wall. The old lady actually turned right into the wall. The second night, while she was walking to our room, she saw the same old lady in white standing at the end of the corridor staring at us. This is when she grabbed my arms and tried to hide behind me. After hearing her story, I told her that in future, if she felt eerie, uncomfortable, or anything not right, just tell me you don't like the room. We can then request to change the room or even change the hotel.
Hi everyone. After reading the countless entries on this site, I've finally decided to share my encounters in Bangkok, which occurred back in 2010. My family visited Bangkok during the weekend, just before the September holiday was due to start, and our accommodation was the 10-star Inn. Our rooms were located on the 3rd story with a view of the main street just below. My brother and I shared the same room, which had 2 single beds. Upon entering the room after checking into the hotel at around 10 a.m., we felt a sudden drought sweep across our faces. However, we just brushed that aside, thinking that the previous occupant might have just left recently, and it was what's left of the cold air from the air conditioner. The room was tastefully furnished with the necessary amenities, and as I was about to open the drawer between the beds, I found a small panyant attached to the upper deck of the cabinet. I felt strange that this thing would be placed in a hotel room, but I didn't think much of it. After touring the city and finishing our dinner, we returned to the hotel to rest for the night. And after walking into our room, my brother and I felt extremely chilly, although we had switched off the air conditioner while we were out, but we attributed this to the afternoon downpour. Since both of us were still not yet prepared to sleep as of yet, we watched the local shows and news on the television. It was about 9 p.m., and just then, we heard 2 distinct knocks on the door. Thinking it was our sister or parents, I opened it, only to find nobody there. Odd, I thought, and informed my brother of my discovery, but he told me that it might have been sounds emanating from the other occupied rooms, which we had misinterpreted. And no sooner had he finished the sentence, did the 2 of us hear another couple of knocks, albeit sounding louder and more furious than the previous 2. This time, it was coming from our bathroom. We looked at each other. We were the only 2 occupants of that particular room, and we're standing right next to each other in the bedroom. So, how could there possibly be strange sounds coming from the empty toilet? Hurriedly, my brother ran to take a look at the bathroom, with me closely behind, to check for burglars or any other objects which could have produced that noise. And as expected, everything was in their original place, with not a single soul to be found. So we quickly slammed the door shut and we leapt into our bed after turning off the television. During the night, my brother and I woke up a number of times, both feeling as though someone or something was stroking the soles of our feet. But we couldn't spot the culprit, despite the fact that we have left the light in the walkway lit. Already spooked by the sounds from the toilet, we took out our amulets. I wore a pra mai torani, while my brother wore a prakring. We recited some sutras, and fortunately, the annoying entity did not pay us a visit again. Thinking that the thing had finally left us for good, we let our guards down, not knowing the shape of things to come. The next day, although we yearned to share our experiences with the rest of our family, we ultimately decided not to, for fear of frightening them and turning the incident into our wet blanket, which would ruin the rest of our stay in Bangkok. However, during our daytime tour around the city, my brother accidentally sprained his ankle while walking down a flight of stairs when we were exiting a temple. Although I doubt this had anything to do with the hotel spirit, he was talking to me at that time and had probably not looked at his steps. So my brother had to swap his bed for my sister's so he could sleep in our parents' room that night. Since my sister was pooped from the day's walking, she fell into a deep slumber on her bed almost immediately after showering. Of course, as I was still rather invigorated despite the day's events, as usual, I made the decision to stay up and play some rounds of Battlefield on my laptop before going to sleep. As I was into my second round, I heard gasps from my sister. Thinking that she was just having a dream of some sort, I ignored them. But my sister continued, and later, groans. So I climbed out of my chair to ask her if she was okay, and by this time, she started to thrash and squirm about on her bed, and it was then when I felt something was terribly amiss. I shook her several times, but she didn't wake up from her apparent trance. In fact, her actions just became worse, and her head was snapping from side to side while her body was raising and subsequently slamming back into the bed with such force that the bed squeaked really loud, and I could actually feel the floor vibrate. She also appeared to be screaming silently, opening her mouth wide, and yet no sound came out. Now, my sister is of the rather slim and lightweight type, who could have not came crashing onto the bed so violently. And feeling extremely scared, I ran to my parents and quickly told them of the disturbances in my room. Without sparing another second, the three of us returned to my room, where my sister was still quaking and contorting about on her bed. My father quickly took out his own amulet and placed it against my sister's forehead before chanting some of the sutras he had memorized. My sister twisted for one last time before slumping back on her bed. My dad then quickly brought her into the bathroom and splashed some cold water on her face in an attempt to revive her. She did wake up this time, and although she was breathing a little erratically, she started crying and hugging my dad. He then took her into my parents' room, which after some comforting, my sister told us her horrifying story. Shortly after falling asleep, she suddenly woke up and saw a foul-smelling dark shadow with crimson eyes and a pair of cruel-looking claws at the foot of her bed. It then climbed onto her bed and then tried to kiss her with its forked tongue. So she gave it a huge slap across the face, and this obviously enraged it. It then ripped off her clothes and did ungodly things to her that I can't even stomach explaining here. It felt very painful for her, and she could feel her vitality being drained by this thing, and no matter how hard she tried to struggle, she could not get the demon off of her. She also mentioned that when she hit it across the back, her hand became coated with a layer of black smelly goo. All the while, it was mouthing lewd thoughts about her, but then it disappeared into thin air. My family became extremely appalled and concerned about what she said, and my father insisted on changing the hotel, although my mother told him that it was pointless, since it was the holiday season and it was already midnight. As such, We fetched my brother's belongings and brought them into my parents' room, where we pretty much stayed awake for the entire night. Needless to say, we checked out of the following morning, and when we related our horrific experiences to the receptionist, we were greeted by surprised expressions. Apparently, ghostly happenings were frequent in this hotel, but this was the first time a sexual attack by a spirit actually occurred. Nonetheless, they offered to refund us our money, and we gladly accepted it. We felt that the hotel cannot be held responsible for this. Over the next few days, my family brought my sister to several temples throughout the city, trying to understand what exactly had happened, or rather, why that thing chose to attack her. Finally, we chanced upon this old luangpor, or a head priest, who explained to us that it was a demonic entity that had targeted my poor sister, and it chose her because she seemed vulnerable since she was exhausted. But he then reassured us that although the attack was savage and traumatizing, she had not been harmed physically and could bring things back to normal by blessing her. He also gave her a small talisman to ward off any further attacks. My sister has since left the incident behind and is fine as of today, although I do not for a single moment doubt that she has completely forgotten about that fateful night in Bangkok.
In 2011, around May, I went on a solo trip to Bangkok, Thailand. I checked into a hotel apartment near the river. The apartment looked new and comfortable with a huge bed, clean toilet, microwave oven, fridge, TV and Wi-Fi, and some free goodies. I settled in immediately. For the first 2 nights, nothing strange happened. But on the 3rd night, I had the air conditioning on, TV on for some noise while using my laptop in bed, chatting away with my friends and former boss. I heard a faint noise coming from the balcony. It sounded like someone's breathing. Gasping for air would be a better description though. Now, the balcony is located on my right side and the entrance to my room is on the left, opposite to each other. The balcony light was on, and the curtain was also drawn. If there was something, I suppose I would be able to see, as the light would cast a shadow. However, I didn't see anything, so I ignored and continued chatting alone. But the noise kept coming. Thinking maybe I was imagining things, I continued to ignore it. But after 10 minutes, the same breathing sound still persisted. So this time I muted the TV, turned off the air conditioning, and listened intently. It was still there, so I thought, okay, time to sleep. I left the balcony lights on and turned off the light in my room and had the blanket over my head. I was a bit freaked out, and because I'm a Christian, I prayed loudly for God's protection and for it to leave me alone. After 10 minutes, the same noise I heard disappeared. Okay, I took a deep breath and thought maybe it was nothing and tried to sleep. As I was falling asleep, the same breathing sound I heard outside the balcony a while back reappeared again, this time outside the entrance to my apartment. It was going up and down the empty corridor. I could hear it very clearly and loudly. Now, as I explained before, the balcony and entrance are located opposite from each other. So how did it get from the balcony to the other side? This time, it was much louder, and I could hear very clearly someone gasping for air, and the sound traveled up and down the corridor the whole night and echoed. At one point, I was so upset with it, I decided to get up, turn on the lights in my room, and walked right up to the spy hole on the door and peeked outside into the corridor. But it was still there, and I saw nothing. Thing is, on that floor alone, there was only me and another male occupant, and the apartments can only be accessed via a key. So it is indeed impossible for any outsiders to enter unless they have the access key. Knowing something wasn't right, I went back to bed, turned off the lights and tried to sleep. My heart was pounding and I didn't want to make myself seem weak, so I tried not to be scared and pretended nothing happened. However, on the outside, in the corridor, this thing was up all night, breathing loudly and moving up and down the long stretch of corridor till 4 a.m. Yes, I was up the whole night, listening to it, while at the same time waiting for daylight. Exactly 4 a.m., I started to hear chickens. This is when it started to go away. I heard it moving along the corridor and slowly faded away at the other end of the corridor. But the strange thing was, this time, I also heard the tinkle of chains dragging along the floor, as if it was tied up with chains. I didn't check out the next day as I had paid the entire 7 days rental, so I decided to stay. However, for the next few nights, it didn't revisit me at all. I've had some strange experiences and have seen things before, but this was by far the worst.
On one of the holidays, my family, which consists of my son and husband, decided to go for a short holiday trip together with my mother and mother-in-law. At that time, it seemed like a good idea, and coincidentally, although it was a last-minute decision, there were rooms available in the usually peaked holiday season. 3 days before we took off to Hatyai, Thailand for the holidays, my son fell sick for 3 days, but was however assured by the doctor that he would heal soon. On the journey to Hatyai, my son seemed to look better, and when we decided to make the first stop at one of the Kwan Yin Ma temple, he was feeling much better already. But as soon as we checked in to one of the hotels at Hatyai, my son immediately took in fever and vomited a little blood. Perhaps it was due to the pizza my husband ordered for him over lunch. Strange things started happening while we were having a massage at our rooms. The hairdryer at the bathroom started to switch on by itself, causing a massive noise in the bathroom. It was only then that I was informed later the next day by my mother-in-law that it was the Chinese Ghost Festival Day. For a Chinese, it would be unwise to travel during this time of the year, and if you happen to be unlucky and accidentally bumped into one of the spirits, you may be facing great danger ahead. That day, I was fuming with anger over my husband's stupidity. How could he have made such a decision knowing that it was this time of the year? That night, we slept soundly. Because my son was still ill, he slept in between me and my husband. Strange things started happening again. This time, I heard someone playing the little bells on my anklet. The funny thing is, while all this was happening, I was keeping still, not moving an inch, and yet I could hear clearly the ringing sound of my anklet's little bells. I was dumbstruck. Fearing that the ghost may disturb my son, I took the courage to wake up, switched on all the lights including the bathroom lights, and then sat up. At this time, my husband woke up and was puzzled of my actions. I explained to him to caution tonight, and he immediately knew what I meant. The rest of the night was at peace, and after, I switched on all the lights off in the room, and the room was quiet. Perhaps the naughty ghost just wanted to play, but meant no harm.
This happened many years ago. I already put this episode behind me and tried my best to forget it. Sometimes when I think back, I still get the shivers. When I read some ghost stories, I suddenly feel a chilly wind blow into my room. Many years back, I was staying alone. Back then, I was using iPhone 3GS. As you all know, when you leave the iPhone there, after a while it will auto-lock and show the unlock screen. I remember it was an afternoon and the weather was bright and sunny. Everything was as per usual. I went to take a bath, and when I came out, from the distance of the kitchen to the living room, I saw the screen of the iPhone switch pages. I had 3 pages of apps, and when I walked near it, it suddenly changed to the unlock screen. I didn't sense anything at first. I just thought, okay, maybe still buggy or the battery has something wrong with it. I brushed it aside. Be reminded, I was alone and also I had the password lock. Many days later, my friend suddenly called me and asked what's the matter. I told him it was him calling and asking me what's up. He said he saw my missed call. I say I never called you. Then he just said, okay, never mind. I checked my call history, confirmed I never called him. Then a WhatsApp message came in. He showed me his call history and indeed there was a missed call from my number. What the hell, I thought. Is he kidding me? I replied saying maybe there was a problem with my phone. Days went by and finally I went to Singtel to ask about it. And they gave me the what the hell look and thought I was trolling them. The problems started to get worse. Fast forward to a few weeks later. I was messing with some stuff at home because I was on leave. And when I faced a problem with my campus login, I looked for my phone to call the school. I tried to find my phone for 5 minutes. Totally couldn't find it. I was in a fairly small apartment and in the end I called myself to see where the ringing tone came from. When I heard the direction of the ringtone, I froze and all the hairs on my body stood up. The ringtone came from the storeroom. The problem is, I hadn't entered the storeroom for some time. A few months, and only when I want to go back to Singapore, I go in and take luggage. To make it worse, the storeroom is locked with a numbered lock. I don't know what to do, honestly. The first thing I did was look around the house to see if there were any other people who for some reason may be pranking me. And next, I immediately turned on all the lights in the house. The corridor was dark. I quickly went to the storeroom with my back against the wall, and the phone was on the floor in the middle of the storeroom. So freaky. I was really very scared. Back then I was very religious and I kept chanting the Om Mani Padme Hum. I quickly took the phone and went downstairs and called my friend. After that my friend said he would come over because he stayed quite near. When he arrived, he asked if I was okay because I looked very pale. I told him what happened and he suggested we go to the temple to pray. And since we were close by, we took a cab to a temple and also we donated money there. The monk asked the temple counter if any Langfo was in today, as we were here to ask for help, and I was very glad my friend was there as my Thai wasn't that great. When we met the Langfo, we paid him respect and my friend told him what happened. The monk took a deep look at me and said I was being followed by a female spirit, and the spirit is now outside at the temple gate and didn't come in. The spirit didn't know me, but was the previous occupant of the apartment I was in, and died a wrongful death, and wanted me to help her. I don't know if this was true, but the apartment was let to me by a senior in the university who graduated and left to rent an apartment in Sathorn Road, as he found a job there, and it was easier to commute. So, if what he said is true, the spirit might have died a very long time ago. After hearing that, I didn't know if I wanted to cry or laugh. I thought this kind of thing only happened in ghost movies or in Hong Kong. As I didn't speak much Thai, I kept silent, and as my Thai wasn't so good, I asked my friend to ask the Langfo for help. The story is not spectacular as there isn't 10 monks sitting in a row trying to purge any centipede or nails or fish hooks out of my body like a movie. He took the phabat, as Thais call it, the bowl with water and a phra kring inside to bless holy water. He lit a candle and told me to recite after him as he chanted slowly, as I couldn't speak Thai fast. The thing went on for like 10 minutes or so. Then, he asked me to pour some sort of water from a small container into a chalice. He then asked me to use the water from the chalice to water any tree in the compound. After that, he told my friend the girl wants stuff to be done, but my friend didn't ask what. Maybe to burn things? I don't want to know. I just told the Luang Fo, what can I do as I'm here to take a break from work and experience Thai culture? I'm not ready for all these. The Luang Fo seemed very calm and laughed and told me not to worry, and told me she is harmless and asked me if I had been harmed by her so far. to which I replied no, but would not continue staying there. I asked the Lang Fo if there is any way I could get the spirit out, and he said no. Her spirit is in the house, and he muttered some stuff to my friend. He then gave me an amulet and told me to wear it. Well, I wore it immediately, and he left. I didn't dare to return home, and my friend said if I was really scared, I could bunk in with him. But I went to his house before, and it was very crammed. I didn't know what to do. I was alone in a foreign place, and such things happened. I asked him to come with me back to help me pack my things, just in case I wanted to make a run to the nearest hotel to stay should anything happen again. During the taxi ride back, I asked my friend, what did the Lang Fo tell him? He told me I need to be prepared if I want to know, and of course I just told him to say everything, as I was confused and also helpless. He said the Lang Fo said the spirit would not leave because there are some parts of her still within the house. So I asked him, what parts? He said her bone fragments, but not to worry as the spirit is that of a small female child and not a vengeful ghost. I did not grow up in a place with ghosts in my house, and I could not think of how the monk and my friend could even think this is even okay for me to go back to, but I did anyway. There wasn't a plan B, and I didn't know what else to do. I went back home, and my friend left after a while when I was more settled in. After my friend left, I spoke in Thai to tell the spirit that I'm only here for a while. Don't know if she understood or not. Things didn't happen for another couple of weeks, and I thought I made peace with the spirit. Why didn't I ask him to send the spirit away? Well, the first reason is because I'm there for a few months only. I don't want the monk to put up a fight and chase the spirit away. And also, when I go to other places, the spirit may follow me quietly and wait till the monk cannot help me, and then come out again. The second reason was I didn't want to piss the spirit off, because after all, she didn't harm me. The third reason? I didn't want any trouble, and I just hope she doesn't disturb me or make her presence known. In fact, after that, my friend went and told our teacher, and the teacher told me to think of the incident as a story, and I'm supposed to tell the story in class to the rest of the students in Thai. That was some struggle at that point of time, but I did it anyway, with a lot of laughter from the class. Less than 20 students, mostly Asian, quite a group of Taiwanese and Honky in that intake. A few weeks later, I bought cashew nuts home to eat, and as I reached home around evening, I was very tired. I just threw the plastic bag with cashew nuts in it, and I went to take a bath. By then, I had somehow put the incident behind me. The cashew nuts were in one of those big packets, and inside it, there were many small individually wrapped packets, if that makes any sense. When I came back to the room, I got a shock again. The big packet had been torn open, and the individually small wrapped packets were thrown all around the room. My first reaction was, oh shit, it happened again. I told the spirit off and said I don't want any trouble and can't help her. I didn't sleep well that night. I left the lights on in my room and I sat against the wall, surfing Facebook in case I fell asleep. Gradually, I became more and more sensitive to those things, like my hair would suddenly stand on end and stuff like that. I went to my Thai friend again, and once again, he brought me to another temple, this time further away. We consulted the monk, and again he gave me an amulet and did a blessing over me. This time, I somehow didn't have as much faith when I left the temple. Faith in the sense that there was no guarantee of my not being disturbed. After all, I wasn't harmed, and because of all these small cheap thrills the spirits pulled on me, the monk thinks it might be a mischievous and playful ghost and meant no harm. My thinking is, if you have a kid and a ghost wants to play stunts on your kid, is it okay? Obviously not, right? But, well, the monk thinks it's alright. I need to get myself out of this, but I don't know how. Further trips to more temples. I went to some Chinese temples. I even went up north to the Korat region, and no help. But somehow, doing all these in months, I somehow began to like Thai culture, the Thai way of life, and also their beliefs. It was when I related my experiences to them, and somehow exchanged their knowledge on how they viewed such things, that I began to accept more what I originally thought was their weird way of thinking. As time passed, I began to pity the spirit. This child might have been here for 50 or 60 years. I don't know. If If the occupant was less sensitive to their realm and stayed there for 50 years, she didn't have anyone to talk to or play with for that time. Anyway, one day we were out as a group to sightsee. When I was walking home, there was this pushcart selling chicken sticks, and I thought, why not? I'll just buy one stick for the girl. And another stall beside that was selling mango sticky rice, so I bought that as well. I went home and didn't do any prayers or anything. I just left it there and told her the stuff was for her. That night was peaceful, and ever since then, whenever I was in a good mood or there was a festival, I bought stuff for her also. I generally didn't communicate with her or say anything as long as she didn't disturb me. Looking back at that, I finished my course and went on for one more short course. One day my friend suggested we go back to the temple and ask the Luang Pho if the girl was still following me. When the Luang Pho saw me, he said, "Good man." I asked why. He said the girl looked happier now, and I asked if she was still following me to the gate. To which he replied, "No, she's with us now, behind you." My hair stood up again, and my friend sat up very straight. So I asked the Luang Pho, "What does the girl want?" And he just smiled and said she doesn't need anything, she's just playful. I didn't ask further why she was there or what happened. I wasn't in the mood to play. I explained to him what I did and he smiled. During the course of these few months, whenever something happened to my phone or other weird stuff, of course I would be scared, but somehow after a brief moment, like watching TV or doing an assignment, I would forget about it. And soon after, I was able to turn the lights off and sleep. Here are a few more examples of what happened around my apartment. Sometimes when I woke up, the toothbrush was already on the sink with toothpaste on it. Another thing that was more common was sometimes when I fell asleep, I would hear kids' footsteps running around the house. But only one kid, I'm sure, because I can tell if it's a bunch of kids or not. Another one, which is quite freaky, is, sometimes when people stand close to you, you can feel that they are there when you close your eyes, like behind you or in front of you. There are so many times when I almost fell asleep, but not asleep yet, and I feel there's a face directly in front of my face looking at me. But never once dared to open my eyes, I just pretended to sleep. There were more occurrences during that time, and I am unable to type them all out. But it was like having an invisible housemate who would appear when you are not in that area of the house or at that time. Ultimately, when I left the place to go to Chiang Mai for some other purpose, I hired a few monks to come and do prayers on the apartment on my last day, before I moved out.
And here are the top comments for my last video. Welcome to Miss Creepy Tales Riddle Time. If you know the answer, feel free to leave it in the comments. And the winner gets to be featured in the next video. I have rivers but don't have water. I have dense forest but no trees and animals. I have cities but no people live in those cities. What am I? Hello everyone, it's your creepy sister here. Thank you so much for watching the video. I really appreciate each and every one of you. But I would also like to thank my amazing patrons, my top tippers, and my dearest channel members. Thank you very, very much. I really appreciate it with all of my heart. If you want to support the channel further, you could also choose to become a patron, a tipper, or a channel member. But remember, it's appreciated, but never a requirement. I would also like to announce that we have merch now. The link is in the description of the video, along with all my other social media links, like my Discord server, Twitter, Instagram, and others. You can connect with me and send your stories there. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't yet, and comments are highly appreciated. And remember, your fear feeds me.